Hey, it looks like I'm live. I will assume so. So I am just going to talk and let's get going. So if you join me, I just want to say a massive thank you for jumping on and listening to me talk about some stuff for a little bit. Like I say, mental fatigue and performance drag, something that's really important to me, and that will come across over the next few minutes. I know it says they're a tactical circuit breaker for high performers. You know what, I kind of deliberate around that word high performing, whether you perceive yourself as high performing or what performance means in whatever shape. Then ultimately, this is about the fact that in my own world, I found myself so mentally fatigued, so broken that everything just fell apart, leading to basically chucking a hand grenade on my private and professional life. Some of you may know, some of you may not know, and I'll talk about some of that as we go through. But really, what I want to do is just share as much as I can with you all to stop you getting to the point where you are so broken that you simply can't function anymore. And it all starts with a few simple things, and then your perspective of normal changes. You reframe everything, and then suddenly, when you look back and you kind of go, hold up, that's just not freaking normal, or that's just not freaking right. You look back and go, but at the time, right? And it all starts with that mental fatigue. It's little bits and then little bits and then little bits. And it's that performance drag. Areas of your life will fall apart. So if you're listening to this or you're watching this and you're kind of thinking, hold up, I've lost my mojo. Things seem to be going south. I don't quite know why. I feel like I'm running on empty. I'm awake at 4 o'clock in the morning and wondering what's going on. You're not spending time with your kids. You're angry all the time and you don't know why. Then you know what? I'm hopefully going to share some really important insights with you. So we've got about 30 minutes together. If you've got questions, dump them in the comments and I'll get to them after the live stream. I have got absolutely no idea how to look at comments and various things. This is my first live stream for a very long time. So please bear with me for a secondo. Anyway, look, let's start getting into some of the detail on this one. So look, what's the cost of this? And you know, sometimes you need to find something that resonates with you, and whether that's going to be you don't spend enough time with the kids. And I don't have any kids myself, so I find that really hard to resonate with. You know, I live alone. I don't have a partner. So trying to find those areas where it underpins the why, and we'll talk about some of that a little bit later. So look, I've put some costs down there because sometimes you need to try and find a something which resonates with you. And there's, you know, as annual earnings leak of, you know, over $1,000. And that can come in various different ways. It might be the fact that you miss out on a bonus or you don't get yourself forward for something. There's the lost promotion opportunities. I've made notes around missing deadlines, getting fired, or although there's a ton of things when you start to pinpoint. You know, for me, it's lots, right? It's a lot of money that it's cost me in terms of blowing up my business, impact to others, the humiliation and shame with it become public, the regret, the red flags, all these kinds of things, right? But there is a actual cost with inaction when you get to that point where you are mentally fatigued, where you're broken. And you know, in any of my conversations I have with people that work with me, you know, I'll never share their names in any way, shape, or form because it's confidential. And there will be that I've lost my mojo. I'm snapping at people at work. I don't spend any time with the kids. I've missed out on this. I've missed out on that. I should have got that promotion. And there's a ton of things, and they will end up being something commercial that comes with it. And then when you start thinking about relationship breakdown, you start thinking about losing friends, you start thinking about all of these things that go on. And then suddenly there is a financial impact, there's an emotional impact, there's a spiritual impact, there's an impact to the relationships around you. And this starts really, 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 really small. It is those little things that become embedded into your daily habits that then start to slide you, and then slide and then slide and then slide. And it gets to the point where just trying to raw dog this or trying to willpower your way out of it just won't work, because the systems and the processes around you will be so inherently poor, and they will be reframed as normal. So suddenly you think, well, actually, that's not really a problem. And it fundamentally is. For me, it would be things like I'll go to the pub for the afternoon and have 10 or 12 pints. Then I'll come home and stop at the Shell garage, and not driving, by the way, walking past it, and grab 2 or 3 bottles of cheap wine, and then watch a couple of movies. And then suddenly, when you do things enough, it becomes normal. Then it becomes a systemized process. Then you think it's okay, and then you isolate. So anyway, look, there is a cost of inaction. So if you are watching this and thinking, holy crap, I need to snap myself out of something, then I get it, right? I see you. I understand completely. It is very easy to do. So I want to take a moment here and just kind of step backwards, and then to come forwards, back to the future. I don't know if that works. Kind of works for me. This was 2015, and through an extensive amount of therapy, counseling, crisis care, I started to look at the point where things started to change for me, where there was, if I look back to then, there was a ton of fun. I was out in the mountains all the time. There was some cash in the bank. I was kind of plodding along quite nicely. I had a really nice social circle. Life was pretty rosy. And then I started to do lots of things for other people. My boundaries changed. I started drinking more. Fun Jace, the guy that goes to the pub all the time, would be out all the time, trying to help other people out. Those boundaries changed. Everything around my life changed. I became resentful. I became angry. I became isolated. COVID hit. The business stuff blew up then alone. Brexit, that changed foreign exchange rates. That was a big hit for the business. Then COVID, there wasn't enough support around for small businesses. Anyway, look, this isn't a kind of whoa, whoa, whoa. This is I did not systematically change the environment around me to be able to adapt and deal with the things that were going on. Those environmental changes are one thing. How I pivot and adapt to it is another thing. And all of this stuff is on me without a shadow of a doubt. And that is fundamentally why I want to share this information with you, to be able to see those points. If you see some of these things in you, then you should identify that as a red flag. And I'll talk about some of the red flag and green flag stuff in a moment. How are we doing for time? I genuinely don't know if anybody's here. So if you are here, pop something in the comments to say hi, so at least I can see it afterwards. So I put this together. It was probably 5 or 6 months after I had a significant breakdown in life, and I'd had tons of care. The police nearly sectioned me, section 136, because they saw how close I was to not being here. A permanent solution to a temporary problem, and all of those things that come with it. The years, they went out and they interviewed dentists who talked about the bulimia side of things and the mental health aspects, and I had to have my teeth sorted because my stomach acid had eroded my front teeth so badly that when I knocked them they fell out. I didn't do anything about that. A big strong lad, I'll be able to figure this stuff out. And then the alcohol issues that came with that. So there was a lot for me to unpick, and one of the great things I did was a certification in applied positive psychology. And whilst I've put the cycle of depression symptoms, that is, for me, a significant part of the mental fatigue moves you towards that depressive state. Then your energy starts to leak all over the place. You may not be outwardly depressive, to people around you. It could be, hey, look, this guy's or girl is normal, right? Everything's absolutely tickety-boo. But those depressive and catastrophic thoughts that go around in your brain. So when I sat down and I was looking at the applied positive psychology learning side of things, and this was one of this, how do people get into that loop? What is an entry point? How could it be identified? So when I look back to that picture of me on the beach, I was having fun. I was freaking loving life. Did I have a girlfriend at the time? I think I might have been dating at the time. I liked what I saw in the mirror. I was happy with the things that were going on. I felt like I was in control of outcomes, and all of these things kind of lead to, feeling good about yourself and therefore good about others. So when I started thinking about what's that loop, and I started to look at anhedonia, that loss of pleasure. So I started to lose happiness in going out to the hills. I love being out in the mountains, and it was fundamentally part of an identity that I'd created for myself, and there was a loss of identity that come with it. So when I started to lose the pleasure in that, That then led to avolition, so the loss of motivation and drive. I just didn't want to do anything, therefore I didn't want to play. And then withdrawal, isolation, the loss of interaction with people. And then when you get into that loop, it becomes reinforcing. So if there's anything that you see in yourself as I'm talking through this, this isn't a crikey or abnormal. Actually, it happens really, really, really quickly. You start to not want to do the things that you love. You then reinforce that. You then lose that sense of motivation. You go again, repeat, go again, repeat. And when you do things enough, people talk about this as habits and habit cycles and all this kind of stuff. You go, well, actually, when you do something long enough, it just becomes normal. So it is normal to lay in bed for many, many, many days at a time. It is normal to drink loads and black out. It is normal to walk to the shop and get 15,000 calories of crap, binge eat it, and then feel guilty and make yourself sick. It is normal to smoke 60 cigarettes a day. It is normal to be snappy and angry to loved ones, which then leads to relationship breakdown. It is normal to turn up late for work, which then leads to you being on a performance improvement plan. And you're going, well, what the hell's going on, right? What's your beef, work people? So this is the kind of, once you get into that cycle, it is very, very, very easy to then only exit out of it after something really bad happens. And for me, it was, a pretty public breakdown, personal and business. So this is how I started to look at things. I started to look at what is going on in my life. What was the entry point for that? Where's a frame of reference for me to be able to find out where there was joy, where there was happiness? And, and the counseling and therapy took me back to 2016, and it went back to 2006, and it went back to the childhood. And I was like, oh, this is pretty rotten. However, dealing with trauma is not such a bad thing, especially, at the grand old age of 51. Yes, I know I look younger. Hopefully another 50 years ahead of me. So dealing with that stuff's not a bad thing, but it will loop. You will enter in if you don't do something with it. And that isolation pulls you away from people. So there's nobody there to help snap you out. So this may be that circuit breaker that you need, right, to be able to get yourself out of it. So if you're here, I've got you. So look, let's start looking into some of the practical actions here that can start to help you through this, because that's ultimately what you're here for here, right? I've given you a kind of sense of what was going on. Hopefully, if you're watching this and you feel seen in some of those things, you start to think, all right, come on, Jace, get your shit together. Let's see what we can do about this. So the Mellon Kim protocol, the fun, love, and money. Many of you may not even know what that hell was that. And, just so you know, I purposefully kept it out of tune in case there were any copyright implications with this going live. I think we all know that's not the case. So look, the daily actions which can help move you forwards more intentionally. So when I look back at the life that I was leading, there was plenty of fun. I was connected to people. I had a nice social circle, and there was a bit of cash in the bank. I mean, not much, right? I've never been, I think I've in previous lives in, IT sales and places, I've done kind of well for myself, but it was enough to be able to live and to not worry. So when I think about daily, what am I doing daily to be able to feed my soul, to be able to keep myself moving forwards in a more positive way, to snap me out of depressive cycles? So when I think about doing something fun, right? When did we lose that childlike sense of fun and happiness? And I think, I'll talk about the World Cup for a bit. The world is obsessed with Haaland at the moment. But if you look at him, he's got this cheeky grin on his face. He has fun with moments on the pitch. When you see his stuff on Snapchat, he's just almost taken the mickey out of himself. That fun-like behavior, when we take all this stuff too seriously, we end up in our heads all the time. One of the greatest guys I know, I saw something, it was like £1.50, I think, and it was one of these cap guns where you take the top off a cap and you can fire it. It only goes like a couple of meters, but it's like childlike fun. We need to be reclaiming more joy in our lives. So when we start thinking about daily conscious intentions to be able to have more fun with things, And the emotional connections, that fun, love, and money, right? These are three really simple things that we can do on a daily basis. Connect up with someone that you love, a family member, pop them a message, write a letter to someone that you care about, send a joke to somebody. It is so simple, but it will light up your world. It will remind you about this goodness of life. And then all of these things, when you've got this significant amount of mental fatigue, everything is going to leak. Your energy will leak. And we'll bring this back to that performance leak. I think I spat them. Performance leak. So you are leaking energy. You will leak the ability to perform, because you are so unhappy and so dissatisfied and so broken or so distant in other parts. So once you plug the gaps in areas, that means that energy will be able to fuel into better places. So you'll be able to redirect your mental energy to better things, because when the cup is full, how many billion times have we heard the cup is full and cup is half full and cup is empty and all this stuff? The reality is it's your cup. You can fill it up with whatever you want. So when you fill it up with fun, jokes, happiness, maybe a banter. Some people hate the word banter, but sometimes I'll have a good banter session with a great mate, and that makes me feel fun again. And then at the end of the day, money, right? Money's not a dirty word. And in real terms, I don't want to get all like Jordan Belfort and kind of Wolf of Wall Street about this, but there is a reality. There are some fun tokens that are needed to be able to go and do the fun things, whether it's to take the kids to the beach or buy them an ice cream, or whether it's to, treat yourself to, a nice steak or nut roast or whichever it is. And that feeds your soul in terms of feeling great, right? There are still some things that are needed. When you stop focusing on the ability to be able to live, then you stop them being able to progress yourself forwards. Now, I know exactly where I'm going with this, and it will make sense to some and not sense to others. But when you don't have to worry so much about the cash in the bank, when you feel love, when you're having fun, the performance, the ability to perform massively increases, because you're not mentally leaking energy in other places. So think about, you plug the gap to be able to feed the energy this way. It's like having a leak in the petrol tank, right? You're still going to be able to progress, but you're not going to be able to progress and perform. So that's where I'm coming from here with that, the performance leak and being able to regain your edge, is because when you are mentally trying to focus on too many things that aren't working, you can't focus on the one or two things which you really need to focus on. So let's just say you need to focus on an incredible bonus that's coming in September. And that is the bonus, which means that you can take your family and your loved ones on a really nice holiday, or you can buy the engagement ring for your partner, but you're too busy working on, you're too busy frustrated with life, you're too busy angry, you're too busy snapping at people. So you're leaking energy in one way, so you're lost the ability to perform in another. And then these are some things that you can do on a daily basis. Connect up with loved ones, make sure you have fun with your life, and do not run that bank account down to zero. So you need to focus on some of those fun tokens. I hope that makes sense. So that was something that you can consider doing on a daily basis. I'm just going to change my notes around here. Something you can do on a daily basis, but some people like to think a bit more strategically about the things that they can do. For me, I love a bit of a roadmap. I love a bit of a blueprint. I love being able to attach actions to outcomes. So I think that makes sense. So being able to map out and say, right, tomorrow there'll be a 60-minute walk, there'll be a 30-minute session at the gym. Make sure I drink 4 to 5 liters of water, pop a couple of messages into family. And that means that I've got some actions that attach to that fun, love, and money, the Mel and Kim protocols. So look, if you want something that's a little bit more structured, this is something that I use in a refocus and rebuild coaching program. So I'll share some of these actions with you right now. So let's just say you want to think about breaking this down into 4 weeks. So reset and refocus. So when I say there, identify active energy drains and reclaim control and realign the inner compass. So yeah, that's probably a little bit of word salad around that. So here where I'm thinking is red flags and green flags, right? So let me look at an example here. So you identify the things that give you energy. going to the gym, phoning a loved one. It could be creative, maybe a jigsaw puzzle. Let's just use a couple of those. But then you've got those red flag behaviors, the things that you know are going to really tip the balance and cause either short, medium, or long term damage. Snapping at the kids, being aggressive to a partner, telling the boss to go and do one, those kinds of things. And this is going to be a personal thing, right? So then we look at things like, for me, I would ask people to put them into a bit of a weekly tracker, and we get involved in tracker things all the time, but just to trying to get a sense of things, because let's just say, for example, 2 days in a row, you have come home from work and snapped at the kids. I would say 1 is probably a bad day. 2 is potential repetition and needs to be addressed. So that would be highlighted and be able to say, righty ho, there's 2 reds. We need to now inject a green, because, for example, that might well be that you are more snappy because you're not going to the gym. You are more snappy because you're not being creative and you're not fueling that part of your brain. And then when you start to understand the link between things, you can start to get control over the things which are more beneficial to your life and start to ditch things that are just crap, right? So that's part of maybe a week 1, right? You could start to think about what's really good for me, tick, what's really bad for me, cross. If I do too many of these, that has to highlight as a red flag, like a big one. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That sounds more like a seal than a freaking siren, right? So it's like, ooh, ooh, ooh. So anyway, back to a process. So it's pretty simple. If I do too many of these things in a row, I need to have a hard look at doing something creative, whether it's a self-care day, whether it's go and pamper yourself. So this could be something that you start to look at for week 1. Now, for week 2, you could start to put some architecture around it. For example, you release the friction for the things that are really great for you. So, for example, if you love doing jigsaw puzzles, why not get a special jigsaw table and have everything laid out so it's really easy for you to be able to get stuck into it when you're feeling those moments. And then with regards to the friction side of things, it might well be that, for example, you go to the gym on the way home from work. So you go and burn out that negative energy to be able to then come back. So you're creating friction where there's bad stuff and you're reducing friction where there's good stuff. Yeah, reduce for the good, increase friction for the bad. Now, look, none of this is new thinking, right? There are plenty of people out there that have talked about it. But then you think about what's the sequence. The sequence is, first of all, for myself, let's get an understanding of what is green and red, then start to put the friction around it. So rather than trying to do everything at once, here I'm just saying, right, let's go week 1. Let's start to identify it. Week 2, let's start to rebuild the structure and habits. And then week 3, for example, you could start to think about applying some kind of pressure reset. And for the people that I talk about pause, process, proceed. And I might even name it, for example, rage. This is terrible. It's such a terrible pun. Reginald is the name for my angriness. So, for example, the other day I was part of a group of people that is about, kind of commercial stuff, getting myself organized, getting things better aligned in my business head to come back into the world of, earning fun, love and money. And I was just furious, absolutely furious with myself. And I had to go down this I use the feelings wheel. For some of you that are connected up with me on LinkedIn, you might have seen that process that I went through. And I was like, right, Reginald is back. What's going on here? And I needed to go through that process. When I put a name on it, it almost kind of makes me laugh. So I put it, let's pause, let's understand, let's process that, and then let's proceed. Because then once I've taken that conscious reflection time, I've then proceeded in a less angry way. It doesn't mean I'm not still kind of a bit pissed with myself, but it's still like, right, I can now control a bit more of an outcome. I tell you what, I'll identify it. I could have made some better choices. Right, here's what I can do. I can set this up. Here's what I can do. I can then put this out there. So by taking that time to identify it. So I think that's really important as you start to think about how you can be more performant. Is that the right word? I hope so. How you can perform more optimally is by understanding that things will leak. That let's just say you've done all this great work. You've lined everything up really well. You've sorted things out, and then suddenly the rage machine takes over and you undo that, and then you're suddenly a suboptimally performing machine which is nearly broken. You're triggered emotionally left, right, and center, and that's because of one negative moment. So the reason why I think this is really important in terms of what you would consider a 4-week process, if that's what you wanted to think about, then is to be able to give yourself that resilience under pressure, because it can undo a huge amount. And then suddenly you are mentally leaking negative stuff all over the place. And you've then moved yourself back into that cycle of, I hate myself. This is just crap. What is wrong with me? Why are other people doing so well and I'm not? What's going on? Why did I say that to that person? Why am I feeling like this? And that is all negative leaking. And once you're negative, then you're not in a positive space to perform. And then if I look at a week 4, that forward momentum. So you've built you've built a better human architecture process around some things. So now's the time that perhaps you can start thinking about, right, let's map out 90 days. I've done some great work. Doing something like this is really important for self-trust, for self-belief, for your own self-esteem, for how you see yourself, what you see when you look in the mirror, that level of confidence. You'll stand a bit taller. You'll sit straighter in meetings. When you're out there in the world, people are like, whoa. If it's me, they'll be like, who is this Jason? He looks absolutely amazing. He looks like a god. It doesn't happen, but it's how you feel, right? Because you've suddenly built a system and process around you which moves you to be in a more performing space. I keep saying this word performing because ultimately this was about the performance league. Because if you're having a throwdown of negative energy all the time, then you will not be able to perform optimally. So you can start to think about what's your next 90-day cycle. So you've done your 4 weeks, right? Now let's start thinking about how you map this out. Where do I embed a few extra goals? Where do I embed a few extra processes? Where do I embed a better system? Where do I embed better architecture? Where do I do some extra learning about human behavior? Or whichever it is, blah, blah, blah. But you have then taken yourself through a really defined, crystal clear set of actions to help you harness your performance engine. I think I'm word salad in here. So basically, it'll just make you a better person. And, we all deserve to be that, right? We all deserve to be the person that we deserve to be. And whatever that is, right? It could be you want to be an astronaut, you go fill your boots, right? Or it could be that you just want to be an incredible mother or father to your kids and to watch them grow up to be a better person than you were, right? It's not for me to say. But once you get to grip with a few more architectural systems around your environment, then you'll start to leak less energy, which means that you can then harness that and position in the right way, like a freaking rocket. Off you go. So anyway, that's just some thoughts and ideas with regards to how you can put a refocus and rebuild roadmap in place. Anyway, shock horror. Yes, there are some things that I offer within a coaching space. And as we push towards the end of this 30 minutes, I'm not going to harness too much. I'll probably follow up with people that have turned up here or commented. Me thoughts obviously welcome. But I am starting August the 1st. It's basically just a kind of big reset, right? It's going to be a WhatsApp broadcast group where every day I'm going to put some voice messages in, upload some information, some insights, some PDFs, just to be able to almost kind of grab you by the shoulders and go, right, let's go. You've got this. I'm in your corner. You've got this. If you've lost your spark, you've lost your momentum, and you just want that kind of push. So 150 quid is a special offer for all of you lovely legends on here. And then there is a 4-week refocus and rebuild that starts with a 45-minute call between you and I, and everything is confidential. I don't talk about names of people. And then what we'll do is we'll map a plan out for 4 weeks. You'll get some private YouTube videos from me with some PDF workbooks to go through. And then at the end of it, we do a complete wash up of it all and help you map out that next 90 days. So look, this is on you, right? But mostly, if you are out there and you are struggling, I hope that there are a few things here that you can see. First of all, you're not alone. Secondly, you're worthy of living that best life. I don't know how I feel about, let's live our best lives, but you absolutely deserve it, right? Everybody deserves to be happy. Everyone deserves to be loved, and everyone deserves to be able to at least live a life which is appropriate to them, and also that gives them the opportunity to go out and have that fun and connect with others. So I think I have not exactly 30 minutes. So I'm going to finish with a thank you. If you got any comments, drop them in. I genuinely don't know if this has gone live, but I'm going to trust that StreamYard has done its thing. I'll probably upload this to YouTube as well. But anyway, look, if you've been here and you've stuck with it, thank you so much. There is more stuff that's going to be coming. Part of the, and just being absolutely honest with you, Viktor Frankl is a Holocaust survivor from years ago, and I'll talk about this in another probably a live stream or a video. And he talked about meaning, and other people will talk about it as a why, but he talks about finding meaning in the suffering. And you know, I've been through a lot created by myself. I've been through a lot that's being caused by others, right? And there's, you know, there's no beef generally around apart from with myself. So I find a lot of meaning in that suffering through sharing these insights to help you all to not get to the point that I did, that slow slide to breakdown. And it's not a very nice place to be. So if you're out there struggling, if you're running on empty, I see you. You can always drop me a DM if there's anything you want to talk about. But anyway, look, I'm going to end this. Thank you so much if you've been here. Thank you so much if you watch again, and I will see you, I don't know, on the flip side.